Anecdote number 4 is that I was always curious about everything. I wanted to be an archaeologist initially, and then I think I wanted to be some sort of biologist, and I don't know, I was just very absolutely interested in things, and I think some of that's being an only child, which I was for the first 10 years of my life. I also have a half-sister, but I was an only child, and my family were new to where we were living, and quite insular and strange in their own ways. Well, not strange really, because I'm the strange one. You would think them extremely normal, normies, as people like to call them, but which I don't believe. I'd like to say I believe normies don't exist, but then when I'm forced to be around normies as opposed to the people who are my friends or the people who make me feel things are fulfilling, maybe it's not the normies' fault. It could be the way that the world is constructed. Society is structured in certain ways that make it impossible to be with the normal people, with the normies, in the way that would be meaningful or close or connected. But yeah, they're very normal, I suppose. I was always very curious, very just open-minded, and then I would find moralistic structures to put around things. I was sort of a Puritan, I was obsessed with the countryside, because I lived in a cul-de-sac, so it wasn't real countryside, but I loved being outside, loved mountains, loved anything that was clarity and clearness. And then you can imagine when I was doing my A-levels, and which I did slightly later than everybody else, because I had a sort of depressive nothingness period of my life, but I was, you can imagine what it was like to discover Wordsworth, or the Romantic poets, or literature generally. It gave me so much and destroyed so much else. There's nothing creative without necessarily constriction and destruction of other things, but I was open and curious, but then also there were strange parameters that I felt that I had to structure because there was no structure. It was as though I wanted anti-human as well. There was something in me, and there's still something in me that always craves a stillness and a clarity and a purity. And then I crave the opposite as well, but I think, I'm very much Henry Thoreau in my life. There's, if you've seen my previous video, I've probably mentioned him a lot because he was an INTP, and he was an archetypal INTP, with all of our struggles and all of our really useful and good aspects as well. And sometimes I'm never certain which direction to go in. It's, do I further become what I am in my personality now? Do you get rid of those? Because I love music, and I love dancing, and I love performing, and I love people. There's part of me that really becomes overstimulated when socializing, and then there's a part of me that really, really loves it. But I guess it's the inverse of that terrifying openness, because I am such an open-minded, open-ended person. Everything's interesting, but then, some things you have to... But it's all ideas. It's all in your own head, or it must be in some ways. Maybe, some of it's like metaphor upon metaphor, constructing something of purpose from a base reality that you're never quite sure what it is, but it's there, it's in everything. I was also Charles Darwin for a while. In Charles Darwin's autobiography, which isn't very informative and is also deceptive because he is too humble and too circumspective. In the beginning of his autobiography, he writes about an obsession with collecting things, and I had the same need to collect, which has become a need of collecting information and almost storing it in folders in my mind. That's the introverted thinking. I was, like Darwin, not particularly focused on schoolwork in the way that I then would become, or on intellectuality or anything that was useful or productive. I took care in a certain way to follow rules and to do what was expected, but I didn't know that I could apply my mind in the way that I now do. And I was obsessed with collecting things, specific toys mostly, magazines, books, and storing everything physically because I didn't know how to do it mentally, and it was almost like a safety. Carry them into the ideals world, the realm of ideas, this idealistic dreamscape, landscape of my imagination. I could gather everything there and create an identity, create a thing that I was trying to do, or I could create a world. I could learn everything, be everything, do everything that was necessary. It was like a real need for getting a grip on life. I had to be obsessed, because if I were not obsessed, then I could not, I couldn't see a reason to live, or I couldn't find anything to think about or feel about. Like, I needed to be obsessed, and it wasn't anything highly specific. It was just, it felt everything is meaningless and barren unless I have this obsession. It's still this need for collecting information, but Charles Darwin talks about how he was an obsessive collector, and I definitely had that phase. Try out different ways of filming, so I'm not like too close to the camera, but I don't know how to film myself because I generally don't, so it's weird. For a long time I was, actually this is going to be a good anecdote. So I was, for a long time, and I technically still am, a tour guide. I'm a London tour guide, and I find it draining to do things that I find meaningful or shallow, or there's a huge dislike of like, a lot of the time I think tourism is pointless, and I don't like tourist activities, and I don't like tourism, and I feel really, really sad for the tourists, which I could make in another video, and why I feel almost tragically sad for the kinds of people who come on these tours. But I was and am but freelance and never working, a tour guide, and I enjoy performing. I'm introverted and shy, but I'm never shy on a stage. I do not get stage fright. I do not get I have absolutely no problem with filming myself in a certain way. Like, I don't know how to film myself, and I'm always worried that I will make myself look ugly, or that I will it's almost like a perfectionism to the point where I can't do it, but it's not the same as it's not like a stage fright or a fear of performance or a fear of putting myself out there. And I think I've done theatre, and I find a tourism job, having a microphone and being in front of people, really easy, really fun sometimes. Sometimes it's fun when you can feed off their energy, and when you feel as though when you're in the mood to do it and you're not trying to do other things and preoccupied. I'm always preoccupied. I have terrible introverted thinking, terrible extroverted intuition, and I am always preoccupied. And the worst thing is when you're on a tour and you're doing a TISI loop, like TISI looping when you're in work. I'd start thinking about aspects of my life that I regretted, my behavior that I regretted, my family relationships and things, and friendships, and privileges, but then a sense of, being done wrong, and just TISI looping on the tours and just getting preoccupied and unable to perform and drained of energy. I would get dizzy and just absolutely sink and feel as though I could collapse from how drained I was from the fucking looping. I enjoy performing, I feed off the energy, and I actually really like it. And so, because it's not awkwardness that I fear, and it's not performing that I fear, and it's not being in front of people or doing weird things. I fear intimacy. I'm really scared of intimacy, and I'm scared of the energy that it requires of me to maintain closeness with people when I know that I'm inadequate because I'm often preoccupied. And it's that balance and between interior and exterior, and a fear of intimacy, and I guess also having, past experiences of being rejected, and I'm sure there's something in that of being an outsider in there somewhere. But I enjoy performing. I'm a London tour guide. Sometimes people have really enjoyed my tours and they thought I was the greatest, and I had enormous tips and really great reviews, and could always get the most tours and the most tips, and I was really loved by the company. But then other times I just gave up and just didn't care and didn't want to work, and had no problem showing that I didn't want to be there. And I would show up late. I couldn't keep the job up. I wasn't fired or anything. I just haven't given them the hours that I'm available because I'm in university as well. I don't like telling facile stories about Mary Poppins or whatever that is. I want to give people real history, real meaningful history, and also test my own knowledge in the process. Sometimes people would really enjoy my tours, and other times they would say I was shit, and I was shit. So, because I didn't care, or I was TISI looping.